Hey folks, Phil Zito here, and in today's BAS Bootcamp video, I want to take some time to go through downloading, uploading controllers, and code libraries, because this is something I see a lot of folks have a lot of questions around. They kind of start to figure out how to write code, but they really don't understand the act of actually downloading code to a controller. So the first thing that you want to do is determine whether you're working in a live programming environment or in a compiled programming environment. So this software right here is a compiled programming environment, meaning that when I create code, I need to go build the code, and then I can send the code to my controller. And if I want to get the code that is in a controller out of a controller, I actually have to go and synchronize in this software. In other software, it's called something different. And I have to upload from the controller. Now, one of the things that you want to be aware of is the difference between downloading and uploading. In most of the software out there, downloading means that you are downloading from your programming software to the actual controlled device. Uploading means that you're uploading from the controlled device to your software. It's important to understand this because when you go to actually program a controller, if you get this mixed up, you can wipe out what's in the controller, or you can wipe out your programming, especially if you aren't practicing good saving practices, meaning you're saving your code regularly and you're making sure that you're not overwriting it. Additionally, on some software, upload actually means uploading from your programming software to the controller, and download actually means downloading from the controller back to your programming software. So you can see where it can get a little confusing for folks. Now, in order to download software in a compiled environment, most of the time, you will go and not have the software actually make sure that it would work. So for example, if I were to go here and delete this, you notice I get an error when I try to go and build, and it tells me that my input is not connected and that this tag right here is not connected. So I need to fix that error before I can do a proper build. And then when I do a build, we'll see kind of the build is going and there's validation and everything's all well and good. When I actually go to download to the controller, I'm just going to download to device, and honestly, if I hit build and send, that would be just fine. It would send it to the device. But if I go download to device and I select the options I want to download, we can see what it's doing, right? It's going and downloading to the device, and we can see all the details about it. Basically, what happens is it saves the code, then it verifies that the device is okay to send the code to, it prepares the code to send, it sends the code, it does any synchronization and any other things I've selected it to do, and then it completes. Pretty straightforward. What's really important to understand, though, and this will probably be a shorter video because there's not that much to cover around this, but what's important to understand is that in a live programming environment, which I'll try to fire up one real quick while this is running in the background, but in a live programming environment, what happens is if you change code, it actually affects the running code. And there's pros and cons to that. There's the pro in that you don't actually have to take the controller offline to do code changes, so that's nice. The downside of that is that the controller's not offline or when you're making code changes, meaning you're making code changes to live code in a controller, which can kind of really hose stuff up. So you need to be cognizant of when you're actually going and making those changes. Just be aware of how all that works. Let's talk about code libraries real quick. So you can see I've got some lead and lag code right here, and it would be a pain in the butt to write this lead lag code all the time. I mean, this would be very difficult to do. I mean, it's hard coded to specific inputs. There's all sorts of issues with doing code like this, because every time I would go to do lead lag, I would have to go and redo this code, and I would have to make sure it matches up to the appropriate inputs, things like that. Well, what you can do on a lot of software, on this specific software, it's called encapsulating. You can actually encapsulate code into blocks. You can do this with Niagara via folders. You can do this in GFX via custom blocks. And then once you actually go and have this custom block, right, you can save this as a code snippet. And what happens when you save it as a code snippet is it then shows up right here. And if I go and add it, you can see there's the code right there. And that's nice in that it saves me from actually having to write that code. Now there's things you have to do to properly configure these so that way you can put inputs into them. And so that way you don't have hard-coded inputs and outputs all the time. But this does save you a lot of time. And what I found is, especially with Niagara, this being, one of the more well-known software sets out there, Niagara has code libraries that aren't in its core code that you can actually find online. And you can use these code libraries to do things that aren't in the kit control library. So kit control library is the actual library that is used for programming in Niagara. And Niagara is a live programming environment when you're programming on the worksheet. But the thing is that maybe it doesn't have, like this has right here, we go to HVAC, has the lead lag, right? This by default, the GFX software by default out of the box does not have lead lag, right? It doesn't have that. I mean, you could make some of these HVAC blocks work as lead lag, but out the box, it doesn't have a block called lead lag. So you could create your own and put it in your code library and share your code library with one another. And that's a very powerful way to make yourself more efficient. So as you're starting to program, start building out your code libraries if your programming software allows that, and make sure that you are aware of how you actually compile your code and how you send your code to controllers and how you receive your code from controllers. Understanding those three things, how to create custom code, how to send code to controllers, and how to receive code from controllers will really help you out a lot in the field. If you have any questions, definitely go to the comment section in this video. Love to hear from you. Thanks a ton and take care.